Last week, I was invited into Ali Abdaal's productivity lab to give a Q&A to his members. We covered topics like running a business, lifestyle design, and of course, productivity. In this video, you'll hear my take on how you become a digital nomad, what to do if you've overcommitted, and if you could have a fear of success. We also cover controlling perfectionism, creating your principles, and finding and using your ACE cards. You'll also find out when I think is too old to start a business. Get comfy and let's dive in. I was on the Deep Dive podcast, I think about a year ago, and that came about because I was in London and I'd met Ali because two people had introduced us on the exact same day. So we just thought it was a sign from the universe that we were meant to meet, and then we met, and then he was like, "Hey, come on the pod." He said it so casually, and I was like, "Oh my God." Like this is such big news, and he's just written it in this like casual message on WhatsApp. You know how the first week in January, it's like that glorious time where you're really off the clock because everyone else is off the clock. I just really like that. So I'm always like, don't waste this time, because it's so easy to just want to work the whole time because you're like, oh, no one else is here. But it's actually way more valuable to do good stuff with it. I just came from Thailand and we got our laundry done with like a lovely, lovely laundry lady who was just across the road from the gym, right near the hotel we were staying in. And one day I went to pick it, was a lot lighter than I expected it to be. And it turns out she'd actually lost about 70% of my laundry. Just lost it, just gone, poof, given it to someone else, like that was it. So that was a little bit like, what the hell has happened? Yeah, I was like, this is a sign from the universe. I wasn't meant, they were all my favourite clothes, but I obviously wasn't meant to have them in my life. So yeah, they're gone. But it made packing a lot easier because it was so much lighter. I'm founder of Coachbox AI. We make AI coaches based on real coaches, and I've been doing that for just over a year. And then before that, I built and sold my own social media agency. So I started it when I was 22. I sold it when I was 32 and made a ton of mistakes in that 10 years of running it. And then I also have a column in Forbes where I write about AI and entrepreneurship. I compete internationally in powerlifting, so that's the squat, the bench press, and the deadlift. And then I also don't have a home, so I'm a digital nomad, I guess, and I live in Airbnbs and I live from hotels, and I move location about every 1 to 3 months. And right now I'm in Melbourne, Australia. I travel with my husband. We met and started dating when we were 18. We met at school. Our goal for this year was just to go back to all our favourite places and reduce some of the friction that comes with creating your whole life in a new place. The only two things that hold people back is lack of focus and shiny object syndrome, and they're kind of linked, but they're also separate. In all the business models that there are in the whole world, and in all the different ways there are to make money, make a success, live a great life, there's only one thing that all successful people agree on, and that's just don't give up. You basically need to decide what you're going to do, organise your whole life around doing it, and remove anything else that stands in the way of that goal. For me, it's about finding clarity of thought to then know what to focus on, to mean that I don't feel guilty about doing the stuff that I know I shouldn't really be doing. There's some stuff in your diary where you're like, oh, that other person really wants me to do that, or oh, I said I'd do that thing, so I probably should, or like, oh, well, I had this goal 5 years ago and it's in my calendar, so like I should keep working on it, that kind of stuff. Those things are just so toxic to the person that you really want to be and the things that you really want to do. Take them out, stop doing them, and you're probably going to offend people by doing this. I go to bed at like 9 p.m. So if someone invites me for dinner at 8 p.m, I'm not going to go. It's just a boundary. And I've had people before being like, what do you mean you're not coming? It's a really good dinner, there's really good people. I'm like, I'm going to bed. So no. You almost just have to really be okay to be you and be subtracting stuff because you've got your eye on this prize that you know that you really want above everything else. First, get a really clear idea of what you want your perfect day to look like. And I kind of call it your perfect repeatable day. The idea that if you had to live the same exact day forever and ever and ever, it's got all your favorite things in it, what would they be? But it has to be sustainable. Like I love theme parks. You're not going to go to a theme park every single day. You might want to go to one like once a quarter or once every year. But that every day, that kind of however many hours of work, however many hours of training, like going to a restaurant, hanging with friends, doing some meditation, whatever is in it. What does your day look like, and how do those blocks fit together of all the time components? My goal is that my day's there, but I want to be able to pick it up and drop it into any country and do it. And I understand that the time slots might be different because maybe the gym's open at a different time, or maybe, like at the moment I'm in Australia, but my general manager is in the UK. So if we have conversations, there are different hours, different times of the day. So it's going to have some flexibility, but you want to be intentional about it so that your life is there and everything revolves around you rather than you having to revolve around everything else. That would feel like such a headache. I spent some time in Barcelona a couple of months ago. People in Barcelona, their whole day happens later. But so then if you just go along with it, then you'll end up doing that too. And then you'll be like, oh, I normally work at this time and now there's no time to work. So you get a bit kind of thrown around by it. Decide your perfect repeatable day and then choose places in the world that you honestly just want to go. I would take recommendations from people who are like you. Don't take recommendations from people who don't know how you want to live your life. Like if there's someone who you know has got the like similar interests or you really vibe with, then they're probably going to have gone to places that you will also enjoy. When I turn up at a place, the goal is to kind of reduce the friction before arriving. So, you know, like on Google Maps, get the little street view thing and drag and drop it and like have a little look around the neighborhood and get the vibe of it. Message the Airbnb before and see if you can stock the fridge and see if you can have deliveries there and see how fast you can get into your normal life. Got a little note near my bed. New place, start good habits. Every single new place you get to that you recreate your life is a chance to create habits that are going to see you through that whole month or that whole quarter or however long you're there. There's a time when I went to Copenhagen, I must have put on like a kilo while I was there because the habit that I started in the first few days was I bought sweets from the shop on the way back from the gym and I had them in this drawer that became known as like the sweetie drawer, and every time I went past the sweetie drawer I'd be like, yep, sweeties, and then that would just happen and then I'd just put on weight, and it was like that's the habit I started and that's how it can go wrong. So now I'm super aware. New place, start good habits is a real chance to like clean slate everything and rebuild everything back up. I was about 3 years into running my business, and that's when I started being nomadic. So the first trip I took was a 5-week trip to Sydney, Australia, but I had a team in the UK. So it was that horrible 11-hour time difference. And it was like the worst thing to do. It was not the right time to go, but when I booked it, everything magically fell into place. But the thing that made it magically fall into place, it was kind of this journaling exercise between where am I now? I've got this team, I've got this business that I set up so I could travel the world, but I haven't traveled in 3 years at all. These clients that all rely on me, but I don't want them to rely on me. I want them to rely on like the team members who are looking after their accounts. All this list of what your life looks like now and all the things that you're like a bit not happy with. And then I wrote a list of what I wanted my life to actually look like, which is every day feeling like a Sunday, not having clients reliant on me, not having team members reliant on me, because the clients can speak to the team members and they do the great work and they see great results. And the team are self-sufficient, they know how to look after themselves, they are motivated enough to do their own thing and they don't need me to kind of babysit them. Like I'm more a coach than a manager. I've got these 2 lists. And then what I obsessed over before booking any trips was what's in the gap. The business you've got now, the business you want in the future, the life you've got now, the life you want in the future, the physique you've got now, the physique you want in the future, everything, there's a gap. Becoming like obsessed with that is where all the truth and the magic lies. There's this kind of bias that we think we have to become this whole different person, or we think we need to like make wholesale changes, recreate everything, start from scratch. But really it might be one conversation with one realization that makes you do something different. A tiny, tiny course correct that could send you in an entirely different trajectory. But then once you've got this idea that I need to dig into the gap, I need to find out what's in it, that's your game then. And seeing that as the game of like, I know I can get from here to there. All I need is one thing, one spark, one introduction, one something, then you start to find that. I would journal on all the ways you can say no, all the ways that you can politely opt out, decline in a really friendly way. You've got this whole list between you could do it or you can not do it and you can ignore them. But you probably don't want to do that because that's the burning bridges route. So you've got everything in between. I practice quite a lot of these because I've started getting quite a few more things through email and social media and stuff where it's like, you're just not going to do it. You're not going to do it because you know how finite your own time is. It's like I'm really sorry I can't because, and then what's the because? People will understand. Even just, I can't because I'm overcommitted, or I can't because I'm really focused right now, or I can't because I'm just on a mission with what I'm doing right now and I support you with yours, but I'm sorry that we can't cross paths, but maybe we'll cross paths in the future. I struggle with this sometimes because you can see someone else's side of the story so much that you just want to help them and you want to do everything and you want to give them everything. But like, that's so dangerous to your own potential. So it's like, where do their needs stop and mine begin, and finding that line. Seeing it from the other side, I think, means that your no can involve almost giving them a way forward, giving them the way out, handing them the way of like saving face or taking it somewhere else. That might be you saying, okay, I need to stop doing this because it's not right, it's not aligned with me anymore, but I'm going to do it until this date and I'm going to help you find someone new. Something in there that if it sits right with you, then that's the right thing to do, and they will understand as well. I suspect that someone else who you were working with who also suspected that you weren't aligned, because everyone knows everything. So if you're not aligned with it, they know you're not aligned with it. So maybe when you say, look, I'm really sorry, I can't do this, I thought I could, but I can't, they might be like, oh, that's cool, because now it frees the space for me to find someone else who really does care about my mission. So you could tell them that. You could be like, I think you deserve someone who is very, very aligned with this project, because they're going to give it everything it deserves, because it's going to be amazing, but I just don't have that space. Something I do as well that might help is to come to the conversation as like the best version of you. Before I speak on stage, I listen to just half an hour of Oprah speaking on stage, because she speaks with such love and she's just there to serve, and she'll like give, and so amazing, such a stage presence, that the half an hour before I go on stage, that's who I want to like embody. So I wonder if the half an hour before you have that conversation, meditate and get in a really good headspace and stay away from scrolling social media, and get in the stage where you're like, I'm going to just lead this discussion with love. I'm going to come up with the best thing for everyone. It's going to be amazing, rather than like sitting in traffic for half an hour before and getting annoyed. The fear of success thing is so unbelievably common, and so many people don't realise that they have it. In New Zealand, actually, they have, like, it kind of spread to other places, but it's the thing called tall poppy syndrome, the idea that all the poppies grow, and then if one gets too tall, the other poppies try and like bring it down, like they actually like attack the big poppy. Families that do it, there's friendship groups that do it, there's societies that do it. We're kind of conditioned to not want to be the tall poppy, because once we're the tall poppy, other people will try and bring us down. Once you show up on social media, you start getting some weird trolls who send you weird messages. Once you get success and you have a lot of money, you're going to have nice things and people are going to want to like rob you. There's all sorts of reasons for the fear of success. Bear in mind that they're there and kind of keep them there, but I think that all the stuff you get to keep compared to the stuff that you give away is 100% worth it. Your self-awareness is honestly 80% of the whole thing. So many people don't have self-awareness, so just having a self-awareness that you might have a fear of success, you've done the hardest part now, because all you have to do is notice when it's coming up and then just be like, oh, I'm conditioned to think that way, so now I cannot think that way, and you can like choose a different belief. You're going to take these 6 months, and then if at the end of it you haven't achieved anything, you might feel like it's not been worth it, or like you might feel like it's been a failure or something like that. I would actually say, I would tell yourself that it's probably not going to work in 6 months. I would say, like, by the end of 6 months, I probably actually won't have achieved anything really amazing, but it doesn't matter, because I'm going to have 6 months of experience in achieving something amazing. During those 6 months, I will probably have had conversations with the people who are going to help me create something amazing. You have to believe beyond the 6 months. I feel like putting a deadline on it, that's a kind of self-sabotage move, because it's like, oh, I've got this thing that I have to achieve, and then if I don't achieve it, I'm a failure. You're kind of setting yourself up to be a failure. Own the failure. In 6 months, I might have achieved absolutely nothing. I might have still not have found a place that me and my dog can live, but I'm going to believe that past it, I'm going to get somewhere, and that's okay. Things always take longer, a lot longer. A really obvious belief that someone will always have is a money belief. If I said to you, money is, what's the first word that pops into your head? You might have like, money is brilliant, money is only for greedy people, money is something I'll never have, money is something. And it's these beliefs that we carry around because our parents said it to us, or we heard it on the street, or somewhere we've got these beliefs, but we have them about everything. And one of the beliefs that we will often have is the belief that two things go together. If you go to the cinema, you'll probably want popcorn, because cinema companies have got into your head that cinema goes with popcorn, so they've wired these two things together. So now you've got this belief. But some of your beliefs that you mentioned were 37 is old, better to get started when you're younger. It's like this means that. Some of those are just not true, but if you go around believing that they're true, they're going to hold you back. But then as soon as you're like, hang on, Colonel Sanders of KFC only got started when he was like 77. Jeff Bezos only got started when he was like 39. You start to collect evidence for why that belief is wrong, and then you can just break it. You can just like shatter it, and then you don't believe it anymore. And then once you don't carry that belief around, it's so powerful because it can't hold you back anymore. Because if you don't believe that 37 is old, it's not. And if you don't believe that you have to make something a success in 6 months, then you don't, because you can see past it. Then you almost feel lighter, and then nothing can get in your way. Couple that with the idea that you know that people are going to try and bring you down when you get somewhere, but you're not going to let them, and the world just opens. It doesn't actually matter. Age is so irrelevant and other people's journeys are so irrelevant. I just happened to start earlier. I just happened to have someone in my life who was a role model at a certain age. That means that I started at a certain time. But then like what I try and do is I think I got all these ace cards handed to me and now I try and give the ace cards back. I want to basically hand out ace cards to former versions of me so that they can skip the learning curve. And if you look for them, you'll find people like that doing it the whole time. I have definitely got advice from mentors and people who have helped me out by sharing their learning and sharing what they learn. You know, like a snakes and ladders board. There are ladders everywhere. The ladders mean that age is totally irrelevant. And so if you find the ladders, it doesn't even matter. You don't have to do it in a linear way. You can go from the experience of a 37-year-old to the experience of a 54-year-old because you happen to find a 54-year-old who's handed 20 years of experience in like one YouTube video. The board's a mess. You don't need to. It's not linear. I would honestly cut yourself some slack because probably the reason that you are doing your own thing is because that attention to detail has really served you. It has made you submit work that is excellent, that has meant that people have referred you and recommended you, that has given you the confidence to start your own thing, that has meant that you will ultimately make it a success. There's definitely a lot of positives in that. Making sure you get the best without the worst of this, I think, involves defining what each thing means. If a week is too long to write an email, what is the optimum amount of time? What does success look like? If you could respond to all your emails and not make any typos and be happy with them in 20 minutes each email, would that mark success? Or would it be 10 minutes? Or would it be something else? For every single thing where you feel like this is a problem, define the version of it that wouldn't be a problem. Because then you've got the where you are now, where you want to be in the future, and then it's the what's in the gap. And then once you find that, then that's what you can work towards. For every single strength that we've got, there's also the weakness. Lots of us are very ambitious, but the weakness of being very ambitious is we can often be very impatient because you're like, oh, I want it to happen right now. If you recognize that there's a strength and you're not going to let it get as far as the weakness, if everything's a scale of 1 to 10, you can recognize when you're falling down into like, oh, I'm feeling impatient right now. And then you can just ask why. And then you can be like, how should I feel different? And then choose and then get up to it being a strength that doesn't hold you back rather than a weakness that does. Perfectionism kind of is procrastination if it is taken too far. So you need to figure out what your 7 out of 10 looks like. The idea in Claude projects is that you upload documents that represent your idea of perfection. And then in the chat, you ask for something that aligns with those documents. Inside a Claude project, you could upload 10 emails that you have sent that match your definition of perfect, and then explain why they match your definition of perfect. And then in the prompt, you could say, this is an email I'm about to write. Make it perfect in accordance with my definition of perfect that's in your project library. And then paste in the email that you're about to write and get Claude to make it perfect based on your rules, which might chop out all those extra days. Because I have a feeling that your version of a perfect email or a perfect document or something perfect, it's like that because it follows certain rules. It's got a certain structure in a certain tone. There's an AI tool out there that could potentially help you with that. I've been geeking out on AI tools. These are what enables us to use more of our human superpowers, because before we might have needed a team of like 5 people to do something, but now it's like me and Claude, we can get everything done between us. One of the things that's in there is a weekly debrief prompt, something that every single week you're like, this is what I achieved, this is what I want to do next week, this is like a kind of like take stock of it. And if you copy and paste this and put it into ChatGPT, it'll ask you questions about your life and your goals and what you want to achieve and what marks a day well done. And it will give you a weekly debrief agenda that you could run every single week. And then there's a few more in there around reorganizing your to-do list or how to subtract stuff. So we talked about subtraction at the start, the idea that you could almost have a journaling session with an AI tool to figure out what to subtract. Because often when we do it ourselves, it's emotional and it's trapped in guilt and different obligations. But if you're just talking to a robot, it doesn't care about that stuff. So it's going to help you come up with the more objective way of thinking about it. The main thing that it all came down to was not multitasking. very clear boundaries. The biggest two things that I have in my life that are separate, that require a different energy, is business and powerlifting. And you know, when, if you ever go to the gym and you see someone on the bench checking their emails, they are not getting any stronger. They are not getting any stronger whatsoever. And also their emails are suffering because they're distracted from writing them. I'm like the opposite of that. If I'm in the gym, my phone's on airplane mode and I'm not thinking about work at all. And it's the same with if I'm at work, I'm not thinking about training. Whatever you've got in your life where it's like a divide, mixing the two, it can't serve either, because you're costing energy from the other one, which means you're not fully present in one. The main thing is that it doesn't give your default mode network a chance to work. This is the most powerful thing, the idea that your subconscious knows everything, because it's processing stuff that's happening all the time. Everything that anyone's ever said to you, every little idea that you've had, you've got all the information in your head already. You don't need another podcast, you don't need another business guru, you don't need to gather information, you've got it there. You just need to tune into the stillness. But because we never get that stillness, we never go for a walk without our phones, we never don't check notifications, we don't ever get a chance to get the stillness. But so much of it comes from just focusing on one thing at a time, or focusing on nothing. Default mode network. So it's like a different part of your brain. It's the part that processes stuff while you're kind of focused on other things, while you're a bit switched off. It's like the reason why when you go into the shower you have really good ideas and you don't know why, but it's because you've just reached this state of relaxation that your default mode network can work. And it's like it's constantly processing stuff, but when you don't give it chance to process stuff, you don't get the answers. So it means you kind of ignore all the signs. Some of the realizations that I get, I'm like, it's almost like you'll get a realization about something you should do or some decision you should take, and it'll seem so obvious to you that you'll be like, why did I not think of this before? And it's because it was there all along. It was there all along, but you had to rely on something really blatantly obvious telling you about it to realize it, because you weren't tuned in with yourself. And that's crazy. There would have been times where we were bored all the time and our heads could switch off all the time and we could just relax and we could come up with these ideas. But now, because we don't have that, we have to like artificially create it. Like sometimes I give my husband my phone and I'm like, take this away from me. Don't give it back. Unless I physically fight you for it, like don't give it back. Just don't, no matter what I say. Like if I offer you bribes, like no, just don't, just take it away, because I want to switch off and I want to like get just more in tune with myself. 5 ChatGPT prompts to write your principles and live by them. There's a Ray Dalio book called Principles, and the idea that you have these principles for your life, for your work, for everything. Yeah, it was not planned, honestly, I promise. If you think about why principles work, it's fascinating, especially when it's related to what Ray Dalio does, which is investing. His company, Bridgewater Associates, they are an investment company and they make all their investments according to principles. And that just means that they can take emotion out of it. They can run things based on, like, we always invest in these type of companies, or we never invest in these kind of companies. Like principles are quite always and never, like they're quite extreme. But because he'll do that over a very, very long period of time, it means he's invested in stuff for the long term, and he's not being one of those kind of day traders that changes their mind all the time. And if you think of that in terms of productivity or in terms of work, if I start out as a freelancer and I decide I'm going to go for these certain types of clients and I'm going to do this certain type of work and I'm going to get to them through a certain medium, like I'm going to show up on LinkedIn for marketing managers and I'm going to do social media management, whatever it is. If you decide that in year 1, by the time you get to year 4, you're going to know that field inside out. You're going to be a master of all of those games. But if along that journey you get sidetracked because you don't stick to your principles that you created at the start, then you'll end up like, oh, LinkedIn's all right, but TikTok, like, I mean, people are getting amazing stuff from TikTok, like, let's swap over to there. Or, yeah, marketing managers are cool, but I just work with this really annoying one, so maybe I should work with entrepreneurs instead, like, swap over there. Or, like, yeah, I like social media management, but I should really double down on this thing instead because this is a better, like, this is more exciting, swap over there. And then you're almost starting that learning curve again and again and again. Given that things just always take longer than you think they're gonna take, and success takes longer, if you keep getting distracted from your principles, you're always starting from zero. And so I'm kind of obsessed with having the principles and then carrying on going with them and then getting all the benefits from the compound consistent, like just doing a little bit every single day that means that you become a master eventually. So I have mine on the about page of my website, and I'll look at them every morning to stick with them and to think like, this is how I want to live over a long period of time. And so if you make yours, which you can with the prompts that I've given you, then you have your like, these are my rules for life. This is what I'm going to do everything by, and then you can share them with other people as well so that they know your principles, and you can encourage people to create theirs. That leads to your success because you're never straddling strategies. You know that if something comes up that doesn't align with your principles, you're not going to get distracted, and then you can stay more focused. So Warren Buffett had his punch card rule where he's like, you've got a punch card with like 8 dots. Every time you start a new project, it's like one of those dots, and in your whole life you've only got 8 that you can do well. It might not be 8, it might be, there's a number. And that's the idea, that you want to just decide what you're going to do, stick to it, keep going with it forever, and not straddle the strategies. Extreme people get extreme results. For some people, balance works really well, but for me, I prefer checking out what the extreme looks like and then readjusting from there. And I quite like having the experience of like going all in, doubling down on something. My second one is make people feel special, and that involves saying hi first and seeing someone's highest potential and then treating them as that person. My third is go where the money is. You become who you hang out with, and you become the mindset you have, and you become the kind of money beliefs that you have. I think they're really big. My fourth is win the mental game, because I think everything is a mental test, and ultimately the people who continue are the people who just don't give up or catastrophize and don't feel like they just have to jump ship as soon as something bad happens. So it's like the idea that everything's this test. And then my fifth one is play your ace cards. Figure out what makes you you. So what are the strengths that you hold, that you just have, that you might be overlooking or not fully playing, and then just be more you. This idea that like everyone else is taken, you can't just try and be like someone else. You have to figure out what makes you you and then be more that. The deep dive podcast I had booked with Ali, I think we booked it for like 6 p.m. And as you know, I go to bed at 9, so 6 p.m. is not really my like finest hour. And I knew that it would be like a 2-hour episode, and I was like, oh my God. And when I was preparing for it, I watched other episodes of the Deep Dive podcast, and I watched Daniel Priestley's episode because he's a friend and we've written a book together before. And I was looking at his episode, and he's like telling all these stories about business, got all these facts and figures, and I was like, oh my God, I need facts and figures. And then I watched another episode that was Jodie Sanchez, and she's like super kind of, she'll use big hand gestures and be like, this, you need to do this, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like very kind of like very direct way of communicating. And I was like, oh my God, I need to do this. And then like I watched a ton of others. With each one, I just got more and more stressed out. And there's like 300 episodes. At some point I realized I can't be like everyone else. I can't just try and be like everyone. So I have to just forget everyone else who's ever been interviewed for this podcast, and I have to just be more me. So the entire day before that podcast episode, the only thing I did was I read my own website, because I was like, I have it. I have the answers. I've written this stuff already. I know this stuff. I'm just going to read my own website. I went and got my eyelashes done. I went and got my hair done. I napped and I meditated. And it was just all along the lines of just be more me. Stop trying to be other people. And I think we all have our own version of how we can just show up as us unashamedly, without trying to, it's not like copying everyone else, it's not trying to copy anyone else, it's not trying to compete against anyone else, it's just being very aware that this is you, you're you, own it. Lots of the beliefs that we carry around with us, all of us, are just from childhood. And so money beliefs is a really big one. Money is, whatever you say after that comes up naturally, is pretty much your parents' version of that you've just had ingrained in you. But I think it's the same for money as it is for work, as it is for travel, as it is for lifestyle. So work is fun, work is a chore, work is something else. From when I was about 15, my mum was self-employed and she worked from home. She worked from home before it was cool. And I remember that when she worked from home, she would be on the phone a lot. And she would get up early to go to networking events, and then she would come back and she would work from her office. And when she was on the phone, me and my sister had to be quiet. So my beliefs that I picked up about work was Work is important, work matters, work is something you take seriously, work involves clients. I can hear her laughing on the phone. You can have fun with clients. It's like there's all these things that you're picking up about what work means, and all of us will have that. If you don't necessarily realise that work can be something that funds your lifestyle, it doesn't mean it can't, it just means that you haven't been exposed to that way of thinking about it before, which I think is super freeing, because then as soon as you are exposed to it, you can be like, oh, well, I can have this. Of course I can have this. Like, why wouldn't I? So there's 4 different games. So we've got the lifestyle game, we've got the performance game, we've got the artist game, and we've got the build to sell game. And each business that you have, or each side hustle that you have, or even your job, it could play a different version of the game at different stages. It's not like you need to start one game and then you have to stay that exact game forever. It's not like principles. When I started out my social media agency, it was kind of the artist game, like the Jodie show, because I was the person who was doing all the work, and I hired people, but they kind of all reported to me, and then all the clients reported to me, and like that was how it worked. And then I was like, hang on, something's wrong here. I want to take a holiday. I want to do this. So then I tried to turn it into a lifestyle business after that. Your life where you are now, your life where you want it to be in the future, and then what's in the gap. And for me, what was in the gap was just booking a trip and then systemizing my business to make the trip happen. It probably is like what's in the gap is actually probably really, really simple. There's also the performance game, and the performance game is where you appreciate that your business is going to come first, that potentially certain elements of your lifestyle come second, because your pursuit is business. Like, you know, you're onto something, you want to make this really, really good, and you want to focus on that. Both of these are fine. I'm in a network with lifestyle entrepreneurs, and you've got many lifestyle entrepreneurs who want to earn a couple of K a month and they want to live in Thailand. But then you've got performance entrepreneurs who want to go big and be millionaires and billionaires and have massive exits and everything. Both are fine. It doesn't matter what you're working on. It just matters that you are working on the thing that matches your version of success. And then after that, the 4th one is the build to sell game. And this is where your game is like, I'm going to build up this business so it becomes a saleable entity, and I'm going to set up this sale so that it can happen. And there's also an awareness of what that requires. So like, I need to build it to this certain amount of revenue or profit, and it needs to be attractive to this type of buyer, and I need to not be so attached to it that I couldn't leave it, and that kind of stuff. For my agency, it was over 10 years, and it was like 3 years of the artist, 5 years of the lifestyle, and then it was over COVID, because we shrunk like 25% in March 2020. We lost so many of our clients. It was a very strange like a couple of weeks. But then over the next 5 months, it was like, this is the performance game. This is like, right, this really matters. We really need to do something. This is where we're going to put everything in and build it. And I was like trying to save jobs pretty much. And then when we had grown and then grown some more, that was when I started playing the build to sell game, which was, how do I make this a complete saleable entity so that I don't have to do that again? So you can have all the different games at different times, but the lifestyle business could just be a way of life. You could be like, that's my game. I don't care about ever selling anything. I don't really mind about being the artist, but maybe I could be the artist within my business. Performance, yeah, that matters. But what matters the most is that I get to train for 2 hours a day, and I get to live wherever I want in the world. Before I started my business at 22, I had 15 jobs before I was 22. But the last one of them, I was really lucky to be assigned a business coach. And I didn't even know I was 21, I didn't know what a business coach was, but I got assigned a business coach who pretty much taught me how to think, taught me how to have self-awareness, taught me how to make decisions, taught me in any decision, you think there's 2 options, but there's actually like an infinite number of options. I'd come to her with a challenge, and I'd say, I'm struggling with this. And she'd say, well, what could you do? And I'd say, well, I could do this. And what else could you do? Well, I could do this. And she'd say, what else? And she'd just keep going. And we'd get to like 7 options in, and I'd be like, there's nothing else. And she's like, there is. And she'd just sit there and she'd just leave me to think. And it was so uncomfortable, and I hated it, and I hated her for it. But it was incredible, because it taught me so much. You think there's 2 options, you think there's one way forward, but there's anything that you could do, anything that you could make work. Learning how to think that then means that you can rely on yourself and you can trust your own judgment because you've got a framework for doing it is what I try and do more. When I hear support, I think about reassurance. the idea of someone needing reassurance, because I think you can never actually be totally like reassured because it peaks and troughs. So you can be reassured and then it can go down. And if you're always relying on other people to reassure you or give you support or something else, then you create this dangerous roller coaster, I think. So my goal is self-sufficiency. Being able to call in people, like if I call my best friend and I said, I really need your help, she would drop everything because I don't really ever do it because I feel like I try and get myself up to a certain level, and then if it really hits the fan, then I'll ask her after that. So the self-sufficiency is like the goal for me. Do cool stuff and then teach other people how to do that same cool stuff. I don't think this isn't something that started when I saw my business. This is something that started probably from the start. So it's like you learn how to use social media, then you teach other people how to use social media. You learn how to run your business from a different country, then you teach other people how to do it. And my outlet, my vehicle for teaching other people is just writing articles. But yours might be YouTube videos. Yours just might be Instagram posts where you share the journey. It doesn't need to be this grand, like, oh, I'm going to make all this money and then I'm going to like buy a, like, you don't have to make all the money and then be a philanthropist. It's like you give back along the way by handing out ladders and ace cards to the people who are just a couple of steps behind you, because they're the ones that you really valued when people a couple of steps ahead of you were giving them back to you. You do the cool stuff, you teach other people how to do the same cool stuff, and then you do cooler stuff, you teach how to do cooler stuff, and then it kind of grows from there. My website is just a collection of the realizations I've had that I've written into blog posts to put them out to the universe to then help someone else with the same thing. So if I've figured out how to do something, like I'm in my business at the moment, we're working on funnels and marketing. And so I'll kind of come up with an insight and then I'll just write a blog post and send it out. And really all I'm doing is writing a journal entry to my former self of like, hey, this is how to do it. The stuff that I wish I'd known back then that I now know that is now going to help someone else. The idea behind just reading my own website before I went on a podcast was you have the answers, you've done the cool stuff, you know how to teach other people how to do the same cool stuff. It's the idea that you don't need to become anyone else or emulate anyone else or learn how to be anyone else. All you have to do is look to your own journey and your own like success or failure or anything you've got and tell the story of it, because you're going to help someone else who's a couple of steps behind. And I also feel like that means you never have imposter syndrome, because you're always like, I know who I am, I know what I've done, I know how I can help other people, and I'm just going to stick to that. And then I'm never going to feel like I don't belong in a room, because I've always got something to bring to the table. I recently met an animal in Australia called a wombat. Like these crazy little animals. They're really like thick. They're like brick density. And a wombat will just burrow and burrow and burrow until it can go no further. It will just be like, "Rrr," and it's not thinking while it's burrowing. It's just going and going and going. We are all capable of being wombats. This insane work ethic where you can be like, right, I'm on a mission, let's do it, let's just be productive in this direction. But often that's just so unbelievably the wrong thing to do, because we can be burrowing down the wrong path. For me, the focus isn't concentration music, a Pomodoro timer, and just doing the stuff. For me, the focus is, whoa, like really zoom out. Why am I doing this thing? What's the bigger picture? In line with the kind of principles and the long-term thing, my goal is to only do things that I'm going to do forever. Run a business. I've had my Forbes column for like 7 years. The whole goal for me and the importance of focus is choosing the right things rather than just wombatting on everything. If you are doing multiple things, I think a really nice framing of all of them is to kind of draw them out as if they were like a funnel. So if your major goal, if you've got one big goal in life, it's like have that down, and then it's like, okay, project A that I'm doing, how does that contribute to that, and then how does project B contribute to that, and then what about the intersection between project A and project B? If my goal was to be a billionaire and I'm running this company to do that, how does powerlifting fit into that? Well, it keeps me more mentally strong so that I can handle the challenges of being a business owner that's going to be what's required to reach my ultimate goal. So it's like kind of map out every component of your life and see how they fit together. Opting out of stuff and saying, no, I can't do this anymore, and saying no to obligations. You start to really realise what doesn't fit in, because there'll be something in there that has no alignment with who you want to be. No, like it's like a past you. It's like it's the version of your life that you are not living anymore. And then it makes it so clear what you need to say goodbye to. And then it means that everything else that is in your life is there because it makes sense, and the intersection of them between each other makes sense. I think so many answers come from a blank piece of paper, mapping stuff out, having a diagram of where stuff fits in. The words start speaking to you and then it makes sense, yeah. I did a very similar exercise before starting Coachbox. My husband and I decided that we were going to start a business together, but we wanted to come up with the right idea and we wanted to take longer to come up with the right idea. We started a spreadsheet of every time we had a business idea, we'd put it down in the spreadsheet and we would map out almost like a business plan for that business. If you've got this strong work ethic, you know that you could make anything work, so you could go in all these different directions at any time and then nothing will work because you're doing too much. So compile your spreadsheet and keep going, and don't buy any domain names and don't go forward with anything, and don't make any moves forward on any business until you've agreed on the one. At the same time, you need to kind of gracefully decline all the others. And it doesn't mean they're not going to happen ever, but it means they're not going to happen like now. When we came up with the idea for Coachbox, we wrote down 35 different ideas, and Coachbox was number 22. So we kept going after we found the one, and then went back to it and we're like, oh, this is the one. It's almost like a kind of ceremony of putting all those other ideas to bed, to sleep. It's like, I'm not going to think of those anymore. They were good ideas and maybe someone else will do them in the future, but I'm going to leave them there. It's just picking one. Finding 3 things: your one dream customer, it's your one offer, so what you're going to sell to them, and it's your one way of reaching them. In my social media agency, it was marketing managers, social media management, and finding them through networking. If you have these 3 things, you can go forever, and that's where you get to your first 100k and then million, and then it goes from there. And you could build a multi-million business by those 3 questions: one marketing channel, one dream customer, one offer, like one kind of product or service. All you're looking for in this business plan is you're looking for a theory of what those things might be for that specific business. You don't need to have the right answer straight away. You just need to have a theory of what those things could be. And then, Dana said it, start validating the idea with your target customer, exactly that. So take those 3 things, go and chat to 10 people who could be your dream customer and say, this is what I've got for sale, essentially. Would you buy it? Would you not buy it? If you wouldn't, why? Why wouldn't you buy it? Get them to commit in some way. And that's literally a business. It can be so simple. We complicate business so much, but it doesn't need to be. It can be honestly reduced down to those few things. Mostly it's about talking to people. You don't need to build an audience first. You need to build an audience of 10 people first, just by having a conversation. I used to do half marathons and 10Ks and 5Ks, and gradually the distance got shorter, and I was like, why is the distance getting shorter? It's because I don't actually want to do this that much. And in the meantime, I kind of discovered lifting weights, and then I started going to the gym with my husband, and there weren't any other women in the weights room. So even though my husband's twice the weight of me, I would look at what he could lift and I'd be like, I could do that. If Ben can do it, I can do it. So I didn't have a limit above me of what was possible. I just had what a man was doing. And so that was what I kind of aspired to do. And then I joined a different gym, got a kind of role model of someone who already competed in powerlifting. And then I went along and did my first competition. And then once you start competing, that keeps you going. And then you just keep going. Honestly, it's without there's no secret to this. It's subtract everything else, pick one thing, and then just keep going when everyone else has given up. In my first competition, there's 40 people there. There'll be 3 people who still do it 7 years ago. It's all you have to do is keep going. All you have to do is just not tap out, and you get somewhere really good. You can only really reserve one space in people's heads. If you're the kind of the MBA guy in someone's head, and then you're the productivity guy in someone else's head, and then you're the someone else guy in someone else's head, there's no it doesn't create a kind of brand. So it's almost you decide the space you want to reserve in someone's head. You decide, I want to be the guy that represents this, and that's what everyone's going to know me for, which just takes deciding. It doesn't matter how you decide. It matters that you come up with the framework, and then it matters that you decide, and then it matters that you stick to it. Which game do you want to play? Do you want to play the lifestyle game, or do you want to play the performance game? Do you want to pick the brand, pick the idea that means that you can most likely sell it, or pick the brand and the idea that means that you can most likely run it from a laptop on a beach? Or do you want to pick the idea that's got the most legs in making the biggest impact upon the world? It starts with what you want, and then it involves aligning your idea with that and then cutting everything else out, it's not like you're going to cut everything out and then you're never going to use those skills. It's like you're going to apply them to the one thing that you are choosing. Right now, I'm just working on my AI business, but I'm still using my skills in like social media. I'm still using my skills in all these other things. They're just all channeled now in one direction. So it means that the energy can take the one thing further rather than it feeling fragmented. It can feel like a real sense of like misalignment in you if you are like this. So you want to be like one direction. You could make any of your one things work, but you know that for sure. It's just, you can't make all of them work. So pick one based on the philosophy of what you want for your overall life and then make it match up with that.